All right, guys, so it's 9 p.m. Welcome to the reporting module, class 1. In this class, we will have the case study with Tesla's annual report. So I will share my screen here with you. And let me show you here. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Today we have class 1 here, Tesla. The first topic will be an introduction to annual reports, because when I say annual report, it's slightly different from just the financial statements. In an annual report, there are other sections that are very important to many different stakeholders. So I will explain briefly what is an annual report, why is it important, and why is it different from just thinking about the financial reports, the balance sheet, the income statement, and so on. After this, we are going to check what is called Form 10K. Form 10K is the name used for the annual reports of American companies that have stocks listed in the stock market. So I will explain you in more detail, and we are going to see Tesla's Form 10K, that is basically Tesla's annual report. And then we are going to perform some analysis of Tesla's financial statements. And at the end of the class, I will open for questions and for discussion. So an introduction to annual reports. First of all, it is mandatory for public companies. And when I say here public companies, it means companies that have stocks listed in the stock market. Empresas de capital aberto, okay? So be careful with the term public companies in English. It has nothing to do with empresas do governo. It means companies that the public, meaning any person, can go there and buy one stock, okay? So it is mandatory for public companies. Tonight, we're going to talk about an American company, Tesla, that is regulated by the SEC. SEC, Security Exchange Commission. It's similar to our CVM here in Brazil. In these filings, they are obliged to publish the Form 10K, that is the annual report, but also you will find 10Q, that is the quarterly report. So every quarter, they have to publish this report. It is mandatory, okay? And for European companies, they just call annual and quarterly reports. And as Europe is a continent with many different countries, some small countries, some larger countries. Each one may have a peculiarity. So we are just going to check the annual reports that they publish globally. How to download annual reports. This is very simple. When I show you Tesla's report, I can open, but you can just go to Google, type the name of the company that you want to find the report. So for example, Google's annual report. You are going to find the investor relations website of the company, and you can download the report. Any public company will publish their annual report. So if you're interested in any company that we don't cover in the next 6 classes, feel free to check the reports there. Who are the main stakeholders? Why do companies publish the annual reports? Write down in the chat. Let's make it a little bit more interactive here. Who may be more concerned with a company's results? Write down in the chat who might be interested in knowing how much profits a company makes, how much debt a company has. What are the parts that are interested? Yes, and they are investors, definitely. Shareholders, the government, exactly. Very good. The investors or the shareholders, in this case, the same thing. The government, because they need to collect taxes. financial institutions, lenders, right? If you're going to lend money to a company, you need to know if the company is financially healthy. Potential investors, Caroline, excellent, excellent. This was going to be my next point here. If you want to invest, I don't know if you guys invest in companies here in Brazil at Bovespa, but if you want to invest in a company, it's interesting that you take a look at the results first, right? To know if the company that you are investing is having profits or losses, what are the trends? Very good. Very good examples, guys. Let me share my screen again. All right. So here, the main stakeholders you mentioned, basically all of them, the shareholders, the executives of the company, right? Because of course, the CFO will have these numbers very clear in his mind, but maybe the marketing, the CMO, the CHRO, the chief operations officers, they are all interested in the company's results as well. Not only the executives, but I would say the employees as well. The auditors, because they need to audit the report and they will put their name on the line here. Potential investors, as Caroline mentioned, government, as Mauricio mentioned, and of course, suppliers and customers. If you are going to give credits to a company, you sell to a company, you need to know if they would be able to pay you and how much credits would you could you give them. For example, a supplier, will this company be able to pay me, right? A customer, if I depend on your product, on your service, will you survive next year? Do I have any risk of losing you as my supplier? So it's important for this entire ecosystem here. And we are going to talk about Tesla. So if you had invested in Tesla 1 year ago, I didn't even pick like 5 years because 5 years is too long, but 1 year ago, this is the BDR, okay, the Brazilian Depository Receipt. So you don't even need to buy in dollars. You could buy here in Brazil, this is stock, and this represents the Tesla's stocks here in Brazil. You would have made 158% in a year, okay? So if you had invested 10,000 reais, you can calculate how much money would you have now, 158% valuation, okay? So this is extremely good, right, for 1 year. This is a spectacular stock valuation here. So Saito asked me in the beginning of the class, because Elon Musk made a poll. Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of Tesla, made a poll on Twitter asking if he should sell 10% of his stocks or no. Why did he make this poll? There is a proposal being discussed in the United States that for these very high net worth individuals, like billionaires or maybe millionaires, I don't know the limits, but they want to tax not only they want to tax the people not only when they sell the stocks and then realize the gain. So imagine you invested here 10,000, you sold for 25,000, you pay the tax when you sell. They want people to pay this tax just over the valuation, okay? And what is the problem here? Even for very, very rich people, their wealth comes from the stocks. They don't have a lot of money in their bank accounts. If they have to pay for this, the only way of doing is by selling their stocks or getting a loan in the bank. So this is a very complicated point, and he was making this poll to call the attention to this topic, okay, to bring this discussion. Because it's a little bit absurd, at least from my perspective, that you charge on unrealized gains. okay? But that was the point of that poll. So now let's take a look at Tesla's annual report. Tomorrow, when I put the recorded version of the class, I will put the reports to download below the video, okay? So this is the annual report. You can see here it's called Form 10K. SEC is the Securities Exchange Commission, the CVM. And for all American companies, you will have exactly this structure. And this is very good for any person to analyze, because you always have the same structure for many different companies. So it's very easy to compare, okay? I highlighted some things here that will be the most important parts of the report for us, okay? It's always like this. It always has these 4 parts. In part 1, we will have business, in which they will mention, it's almost a summary of all the business activities of the company. So what is Tesla about? What does it produce? And what are the initiatives, future initiatives? It's really talking about the business in general. So you can see that it's not only about financial numbers, it's also disclosing to the public the business, okay? Then risk factors. It's very interesting as well, and we are going to see this. These other 2 ones, they're not very important for us: unresolved staff comments and properties. Then we have legal proceedings. In the case of Tesla, there's nothing so interesting here, but for people who are from the tax area, sometimes there are some interesting points to discuss. Legal proceedings are processos legais mesmo, okay? So it can be labor suits, it can be tax related, and so on. Here, in part 2, we have the most important information for us. Selected consolidated financial data. So it's a summary of the most important numbers of the company. Then, management's discussion and analysis of financial condition and results of operations. So, of course, when we analyze a report like this, we must conduct our own analysis. However, the management of the company also highlights some of the most important points of the report. And in green here, the most important part for us: financial statements and supplementary data. So here we will have the balance sheet, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and all the mandatory accounting reports. We have some other information here. And other things that are interesting to analyze sometimes are executive compensation. That is the salary and bonuses and stock options of the CEO, of the C-level team, of the executives, and principal accountant fees and services. That is the amount paid to the company that audited this report. In this case here was PwC. It will always be one of the top 4 and one of the big 4 firms, okay? So let's take a look here at the business part, just for you to have an idea of how the things work. So they give an overview, and I will just read a small part of it here, just for you to understand what kind of information is listed here. So we design, develop, manufacture, sell, and lease high-performance, fully electric vehicles and energy generation and storage system. So the core business of Tesla is not only the electric cars, but also energy generation and storage system, the batteries and the solar panels, and offer services related to our sustainable energy products. We generally sell our products directly to consumers, including through our website and retail locations. So here is just a summary of what is Tesla about. What are the main products or services of the company? Then they have here segments information. because in the results, you are going to see that they separate into two main segments. So we operate as two reportable segments, automotive and energy generation and storage. So we will have this division in the income statement as well. And here they list the products and services. So if you like cars, probably you know that Tesla has the Model 3, that is the cheapest one, Model Y, Model S, and Model X. And they are producing other, they are starting to develop other models as well. And they have the energy storage products. So you have what is called Powerwall. That is like a huge battery that you put in your house, that you can fuel your car, that you can use the energy in your house, and so on. And solar energy offerings. This is very interesting. If you never had heard about it, after the class, just type Tesla solar roofs. São os painéis solares da Tesla. They're very, very interesting. Let's take a look at the second part here. That is the risk. You can see that it's huge, right? It's a huge report. So I just highlighted some risk factors, and you can see that it's very interesting for anyone that wants to invest or has any other relation with the company. So risks related to our ability to grow our business. We may be impacted by macroeconomic conditions resulting for the global COVID-19 pandemic. This is standard for all companies nowadays. If you look any company section of risk factor, there will be, of course, something still related to COVID-19 and the impacts that are not so predictable. But let's see other things here. We may experience delays in launching and ramping the production of our products and features, or we may be unable to control our manufacturing costs. Here they have a huge waiting list for their cars. So they have a lot of cars that they must produce and deliver. Ramping the production, if you don't know the meaning of ramping, means like increasing the production, okay? And manufacturing costs, of course, there are costs that a company can control. There are other costs that a company cannot control. And as we are in this uncertain scenario in global inflation as well, it is a risk factor. So they list it here and they explain in detail. Another one. Our future growth and success are dependent upon consumers' demand for electric vehicles, and specifically our vehicles in an automotive industry that is generally competitive, cyclical, and volatile. So, of course, their growth depends on people wanting, first, electric cars, and second, Tesla's electric cars, because nowadays, Volvo, Ford, they are all producing electric vehicles as well. Tesla has a lot of penetration in this sector in the United States, but in some countries, as in Brazil, the price is extremely high. So it's not even competitive with other brands, with other automakers that started selling electric cars as well. Another risk here. Our suppliers may fail to deliver components according to schedule, prices, quality, and volumes that are acceptable to us, or we may be unable to manage these components effectively. We have also a supply chain, a logistics crisis throughout the world. They depend on suppliers from many different regions, many different, it's a car, it's quite complex, right? A lot of components from many different companies. So this is an example of a risk as well. So you can see that it's very complete, right? Other things that are important. We may be required to defend or insure against product liability claims. And here there's something very important when we talk about Tesla. Let me just stop sharing. Tesla, one of the main features of the car is called autopilot. So the car can basically drive by itself, okay? It's a self-driving car. If there is an accident because of the malfunction of the software that drives the car, they may face a huge lawsuit. Imagine somebody dies or something like this happens from an accident because of the software of the car. So it is a very relevant risk for them, and they need to emphasize these things in the annual report. Coming back here. This is very interesting as well, and not so common for other companies. We are highly dependent on the services of Elon Musk, our Chief Executive Officer. So Elon Musk, he's the main shareholder, owner of the company, the Chief Executive Officer, the person behind the strategy, the person that is the visionary. So the company depends a lot on him. Even though they have probably a fantastic team, recruited the best people in the world, it's a company that is the vision of one man still. So the company is highly dependent on Elon Musk. So this is a relevant risk here. I guess here we covered the most important risk factors. Let me just go back here. And now we are going to take a look at the selected consolidated financial data. What does it mean? It is a summary of the most important numbers of the company. So the first line, total revenues. Total revenues. These numbers here, they are in millions, okay? So it means that we need to add 6 zeros here. So where you see 7,000, it means $7 billion, billion, okay, BN. So what is important here? Take a look at the numbers. The revenues are consistently growing. So in 2016, the revenue was $7 billion. Then we came here to $21 billion in 2018, 24 in 2019, 31 in 2020. So the company is consistently growing, and this is why as well the stocks are growing accordingly. I showed you the number related to 1 year, a valuation of an increase in the value of 158%. In 5 years, Tesla's stocks valued more than 600%. The gross profit. So it is also increasing year after year. So in 2016, 1.6 billion, in 2017, 2.2, then 4, in 2019, 4 billion again, and in 2020, $6.6 billion. But you can see here that the gross margin is not a fantastic gross margin. But bear in mind that this is the automotive industry as well. If you take a look at, we will take a look at technology companies in future classes, and this margin is much higher. But here we are talking about a company that has huge plans, a lot of fixed assets, investments, and of course, the margin in a car is completely different than the margin on a service provided by Google, for example. So the important thing here is the next line. The company was having losses in the previous years, which is something that would be acceptable for a company in this stage. So minus 600 million, minus 1.6 billion, minus 388, 69. But in 2020 was the first year that they were already profitable. So $2 billion in profit. So this is a very important indicator to anyone that is a potential investor or is a Tesla shareholder. The company is now profits, and these profits, they tend to increase as the companies gain scale, launch new products, launch new services. And especially that the technology behind the batteries that are essential for an electric car, it's becoming better and better. So this will be essential for Tesla's results. I'm not going to discuss in this class the numbers below because they're just information of earnings per share, okay? I'm going to concentrate in the accounting aspects here. So here below from the balance sheet, I will show you inside the balance sheet. We have total assets, total long-term liabilities, but I prefer to show you in detail. So remember that I mentioned that we have the management's discussion and analysis. So we are going to analyze the numbers, but the management team from Tesla already did this for us. What is very important here from an English perspective, from studying English, you can incorporate the vocabulary that they use. There is a reason why I like to give these classes with the annual reports and not only show the numbers. It is because if you want to increase your technical vocabulary, this is an excellent opportunity because it's very well written. And it is the kind of analysis that as finance professionals or professionals that have to report results, you are going to need it. So we have here overview and 2020 highlights. They give some initial information as in 2020, we produced 500,000 vehicles and delivered 510,000 vehicles and delivered 500,000 vehicles. Okay, so they sold basically 500,000 cars in 2020. In 2020, we recognized total revenues of $31.5 billion, representing an increase of 6.9 billion compared to the prior year. Então, o que a gente acabou de ver, faturamento de 31 bi, representando um aumento de quase 7 bilhões comparado com o ano anterior. So pay attention to the way that they write the sentence, to the vocabulary that they use. We continue to ramp production to increase production, building new manufacturing capacity and expanding our operations to enable increased deliveries and deployments of products and further revenue growth. And here they even have the 2021 outlook, what they were expecting for this year. The report that we are analyzing, of course, it is the entire year of 2020 because we are still in 2021, so we don't have the annual report of this year. So just to show you something, they have here status of production. They have the production location and which cars are being produced there and what is the status. So they have a factory in Fremont where they produce Model X, Model S, Model 3, and it's active. They have a Gigafactory in Shanghai, in China, producing Model 3 and Model Y, already producing, so they are already have a plant in China. They have a Gigafactory in Berlin for the European consumers, producing Model Y, but they are still constructing the plant. They're constructing one plant in Texas, and they are going to introduce this vehicle here called Cybertruck. And other two new vehicles will be Tesla Semi and Tesla Roadster, okay? Now, we're going to enter the most important part from an accounting perspective. That is the financial statements and supplementary data. So tonight, we are going to talk about the balance sheets and the income statements. And I will just show a detail regarding the cash flow. Before the reports, they always include the report from the public accounting firm that in Brazil we would say the audit firm, okay? So this is when they say public accounting firm, é a empresa de auditoria. Aqui no caso, it is PwC. We have here below signed by PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP. So I just highlighted here the most important part of this report. In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements refers to above present, In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the company as of December 31st, 2020 and 2019. So what do they mean here? As demonstrações contábeis financeiras consolidadas representam uma visão justa. In Portuguese, we have this expression, uma visão verdadeira e justa. This is the case. In all material respects. Então, aqui eles enfatizam a questão da materialidade, tá? Tudo que é material está representado de forma justa nas demonstrações financeiras. Okay, so this is the auditor opinion and signed here by the company. Do you have any idea of what were the fees that PwC charged from Tesla to do the entire analysis? Does anybody want to guess? You can write in the chat here. How much do you think that they charge to perform the entire audit analysis and then to present the auditor's opinion? In US dollars, 100,000, 20 million. It's in the middle, not in the middle. It's inside this brackets. Two very different numbers. 8 million, close. 100 million. That's a lot. 7.5. 10 million. Very close. $14 million, okay, $14 million. It's a lot of money for them to, of course, to do the entire audit work, okay. But it's a normal amount, but it's very high, right? In reais, yes, in reais, a good point. Yeah, it's that's basically it. Well, coming back here, we have consolidated balance sheets. We have here 2019 and 2020. The first line is already very interesting, right? So we have here assets, current assets, cash and cash equivalents. 6.2 billion in cash in 2019, 19.3 in 2020. That's strange, right? How did they make so much cash? And if we had seen that the net income was almost $2 billion in profit. So you can see that only looking at the balance sheet, we cannot find the answer, right? It's impossible to understand how did it happen. So that's why we have the notes to the balance sheet, as notas explicativas. We will have to take a look there. And we will have to take a look at the cash flow statement. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand this number. But continuing here, and just to show you, they even included here already an explanation. Not an explanation, but they say, prior period results have been adjusted to reflect the 5-for-1 stock split effective in the form of a stock dividend in August 2020. See note 1. Overview for details. So you're going to understand later what does it mean, okay? But it is a number that you cannot understand only looking at it. Accounts receivable, we had 1.3 to 1.8 billion, okay, normal variation. Inventory 3.5 billion to 4 billion, normal as well. It increased because the sales increased as well, so not an issue. Prepaid expenses, despesas antecipadas, okay, if you don't remember the meaning. And we have total current assets in 2019 was 12 billion, in 2020, 26 billion. And the most relevant increases in cash, we are going to understand it soon. And then we have a lot of numbers here in the non-current receivables, because remember that their main market is in the United States. In the United States, they do a lot of leasing of cars. Here in Brazil, it's more common that we buy a car, and then if you have money, you pay, otherwise you pay installments. In the United States, leasing is very common, okay? So they have a big number here because of this. And then they have the solar energy systems. They have a huge number in property, plants, and equipment, in ativo imobilizado, because they have these gigafactories, these big plants. So a lot of money here in fixed assets, in PPE. Then we have intangible assets, we have goodwill. These numbers, we only understand what is inside them if we analyze the notes carefully. They will mention there. We don't have time to do everything in detail, but if you want, do this later as an exercise. So in total assets, we had 34 billion in 2019, 52 billion in 2020. Then we have accounts payable 3.7 to 6, a big increase here. Accrued liabilities, passiva, provisão, tá? Accrued provisão 3.2 to 3.8. Deferred revenue, receita diferida 1.1 to 1.4 billion. Customer deposits, adiantamentos de cliente 752 million. Current portion of debt and finance leases. Então, a percentual corrente de dívida de longo prazo. Total current liabilities, $14 billion. In 2019, it was 10. What is interesting to analyze here? The current ratio, okay? There is a financial indicator called current ratio. So the current ratio is a liquidity ratio that measures a company's ability to pay short-term obligations. Current ratio means current assets divided by current liabilities. This number is good if it's higher than 1. So I pre-calculated here for you, not this. Here, the current ratio. So in 2019, we had $12 billion in current assets and $10 billion in current liabilities. So if you divide one by the other, we have 1.13. What does it mean? For each $1 in short-term debt, they have $1.13 to pay for this debt. So this shows a healthy financial condition. If this number was bigger, it would be better, okay? That is the case of 2020. In 2020, we had 26 billion in total current assets and 14 billion in total current liabilities. When I divide one by the other, I have 1.88. So for each dollar of debt, I have $1.88 available or almost available to pay for this debt. So this is becoming a better number, okay, a better scenario for Tesla. Below here, we have what is called the cash ratio. What does it mean? The current ratio considers all the accounts here in the current assets group. So it is including accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid expenses. But then you may tell me, okay, but what if you don't sell the inventory? You still don't have this money, right? What if your customers don't pay you? You have the accounts receivable, but this money is not available for you right now. So there is an indicator called cash ratio. The cash ratio is almost the same calculation here, but we only pick the first line, cash and cash equivalents. So in 2019, we divide 6.2 of cash by the total current liabilities. So the number was below 1, which is not a very good scenario. But in 2020, we had an increase in cash here, 19 billion in cash. Then we divide by 14, and we have here 1.36, okay? And continuing here, we have total liabilities of $28 billion. And you can see something interesting now, okay? Equity, patrimônio líquido. Let's see here, additional paid-in capital, the capital of the company, okay? It was $12 billion in 2019, and now it's $27 billion in 2020. So we had a capital injection here. How did it happen? Why did we have this? Because they issued new shares in the stock markets, okay? As the companies made an IPO to enter the stock markets, later on they can issue new shares. They needed more cash, they issued new shares in the market, they got all this amount of money. As we had the cash increase, the capital increase, sorry, this money, it enters the company as cash, okay? So this is why we had a huge increase in cash here, because we had a capital injection in the company in the form of new shares issued to the public, to the stock market. And now take a look here at the consolidated statements of operations. Sorry, I forgot to share, right? Okay. All right, okay, now yes. So, consolidated statements of operations. There are many translations to DRE, Demonstração dos Resultados, in English. In Form 10K, you will always find consolidated statements of operations, but you may find in other reports, profit and loss statements, P&L simply, income statements, okay? But in this official report, inside Form 10K, it will always be statements of operations for Demonstração dos Resultados. So revenues. Remember that in the beginning, I showed you that they split in two groups here, automotive and energy generation. So we have here automotive sales and automotive leasing. We have the total automotive revenues. So you can see that the number is constantly increasing as well. They sold 18 billion in 2018, 20 billion in 2019, and 27 billion in 2020. So even with COVID, they managed to increase a lot their sales in 2020. The business of energy generation and the solar systems, it's also growing at a kind of shy pace, but it's growing, okay? And we reached the total revenues that we had seen in the selected financial data. It was 21, then 24, and now 31.5 billion dollars in revenues. Then we have here the cost of revenues. Cost of revenues is the same thing as cost of goods sold, custo da mercadoria vendida, or COGS. Okay, it's the same thing, but the terminology used here is cost of revenues. Why? Because they have products and they have services. So it's not cost of goods, okay? It's cost of goods and services, so they use the terminology cost of revenues. It's the cost, okay? So they had revenues of $31 billion and costs of 24, almost $25 billion, leaving us with a gross margin of 6.6 billion dollars. Then let's see the operating expenses here. Research and development, they are a company that is constantly innovating, so they need to invest a lot in research and development. Sincerely, I expected this number to be even bigger, but it's around $1.5 billion, and they maintain this level of investment expenses in R&D. Selling, general, and administrative expenses, 3.1 billion. So total operating expenses, 4.6. And we have an interest income of 1.9, which is also something we would have to look at the notes to understand why they have such a big number here. Maybe it's related to the leasing. And they have the interest expense as well. So the income before income tax, income or loss before income tax, $1.1 billion. Provision for income tax, a provisão por imposto de renda, $292 million, and a net income of $862 million. So remember that this year was the first one that they were profitable. In 2018, they had 1 billion loss. In 2019, 775 million loss, and now a profit. Okay. So these were the most important numbers that we have here. If we continue with the report, we have some other interesting information. For example, they explain some of the accounting. Of course, they use the US GAAP. They are the American company, but they show here some policies that they use. So, for example, in terms of PPE, property, plant, and equipment, they depreciate machinery, equipment, vehicles, and office furniture between 2 and 12 years. Building and building improvements from 15 to 30 years, computer and software from 3 to 10 years. They disclose some of the accounting policies that they use. Of course, everything inside the US GAAP. And you have some information per segment, for example, per sector. Let me see that I can find you the geographic information here. No, not here. Let me just go back just a second. Okay. So let me go back here. I would like to open for questions. Let me just take a look at the chat because I hadn't seen it yet. What about the figure analysis from? Okay, the energy products and storage. It's here. Let me open it here. The numbers are not that relevant still, but I'm pretty sure that they want to grow a lot this number. Here we go. We had in energy generation 2 billion, and in services, that is basically the solar system, 2.3. So we had to sum here. We have around $4.3 billion in revenue, and in terms of costs, you can see that that is deficitary, that we have a loss here in this segment. So for example, energy generation and storage, 2 billion in revenue and basically 2 billion in costs. Okay, so considering that part of these expenses are related to this as well, we have a loss in this segment. Services and other, 2.3 in revenue, 2.6 in costs. So it is deficitary still. We still have losses in this segment here. We had a huge increase in stockholders' equity. Maybe it's a strategy. Yes, the increase in stockholders' equity was related to the issuing of new shares. Okay, this is why it increased capital and consequently the entire stockholders' equity group. Goodwill is low. Yes, I totally agree. Andre, I expected something different because, for example, the solar panels, I know that they acquired another company, but the numbers are really low. So, or by coincidence, they paid an amount that is very close to the net value, the net accounting value, net book value of the company. But I expected a big number there as well. And so now I would like to open for discussions and for your comments. First of all, and feel free to unmute yourself if you want to speak. Did you expect these numbers? Did you expect higher revenues or higher profits, or no? You thought that the losses, there will be more losses? The profit margin is quite low. Yes, it's still very low. I agree. I'm not an expert in the automotive sector, so I don't know how other automakers do. But for me, yes, the margins are, especially the profit margin is very, very low. And even the gross margin, in my opinion, should be higher. But of course, they are gaining scale, so it tends to improve. Any other comment, Mauricio?
Teacher, I think that, I don't know, maybe it's because it is, well, at least my point of view, it is still something new in the market to have an electric car. If we try to use it as an example, here in Brazil, it's really expensive to buy an electric car. So maybe for trying to find a reason, like here in Brazil, it's too expensive to buy an electric car. So maybe this is a reason. That's why their revenue, it's not so big like we would imagine. So maybe can be a reason.
Yeah, this is a good reason, and especially in countries as Brazil. I don't know if there is any kind of tax incentive for electric cars, because in the United States there is. Here in Brazil, I don't know exactly. Do you know? Or does anyone know?
I think we have. I remember that I saw on the news, but it's not something that everybody knows. And of course, we can have these benefits, but it's still good enough to buy an electric car, for example, because like we don't have a lot of places to
recharge
fuel. To recharge the car. So it's really complicated.
Yes, this is maybe this is why the market, they have more than 50% in the United States, and they're growing in China. But yeah, it's totally dependable on these things as well. There are external factors. Does anyone has an idea of how much does it cost here in Brazil? Tesla Model 3, that is the cheapest one. You can guess if you want.
No.
No?
I have no idea.
No idea. Around 200K, about 300K. It 430. You're getting close. I know because I searched it today.
It's really expensive.
I maybe it would be interesting to know. Because of the dollar as well, it's $545,000. From 500 to 600, depending on some things. Okay, and so it's extremely expensive here in the United States. We can check it right now. Let's just let me share it here. Tesla Model 3 price USA. $40,000. So here, because of the taxes and everything, it reaches 540, 600,000. That's crazy, right? And yeah, this is a factor that still makes it very hard to grow in some countries. Yes. But the sales are very good in total revenue, right? $32 billion is a very considerable number, right? It's a very strong sales number.
Also, I have a question about why the value of the company it's more than the competitors in the market. Even the profit is not so good, even the growth is not as expected, I think. Why? We can explain the value of the company.
It is the future perspective, actually. For companies as Tesla, and I heard these about Uber as well, they say if you are an investor in Uber, in Tesla, you are a long-term investor. So they believe that Tesla is building something that in the future will mean that they will dominate the markets, being in this automotive sector, not only because of the electric cars, but also because of the self-driving cars, that their technology. Other companies, they have the technology, but they are one step in front of them in both aspects. So it's more because of future perspectives than because of the results. So it's more or less the discussion that we have here with a new bank, for example, compared to Banco do Brasil, that is an institution with millions and millions of clients that is operating since 1896 or something like this. Or if we want to compare with a private bank, Itaú, and they say, why new bank has a market value that is bigger than Banco do Brasil? It doesn't make sense, right? But it's because of the future perspective as well. If it's rational or not, I don't know. There's a lot of speculative aspects behind it, but it's more because of this, because of a future idea that these companies may dominate certain markets and then they will be extremely profitable. So they're not focused on being profitable at the moment. They're more focused on growing. Hype, as Guilherme mentioned, it's a good reason as well. All these companies, there's a lot of hype here in the analysis regarding the expectation of where are they going to go or reach.
Augusto, I don't know if we can relate to like the question that Ricardo made, but in Tesla's case, I think it's a little bit different because let's try like Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
Maybe nobody here know the name of the CEO. In Tesla's case, it's like, okay,
it's a pop
Tesla
star.
is the company, but I don't know how to say, but it's kind of, okay, we know Tesla, but we know Elon Musk. So it's like we can't separate the entity from the person. So I believe that this hype that everybody's saying, it's not because of Tesla, but I believe it's more because of Elon Musk, because this guy, he has an amazing vision. You know, I don't know if I don't remember when this happened, but I think it was with Bitcoin. I think he bought or he sold something like that. He made the prices increase a lot because he bought. I don't remember the case, but this guy, he's a hype. It's like everything he does.
Dogecoin.
Yes, this one. I think
just
he bought or he sold something.
The price increased a lot, decreased a lot. Yeah.
Yes. So this guy it's amazing.
No, for sure, there is an impact because even for the market, even for CEOs that are not publicly famous, we'll give you an example. I worked in a British company called Racket, and they had a very good CEO that stayed there for around 10 years. And when he decided to leave and the company announced that he was leaving, the stocks fell like 88%, almost 10%. For a British company, this is an absurd, right? It is a very big fall. but the market knows, this guy is good, he's leaving, so there is an impact. Now imagine the hype with these very famous CEOs that are, as I mentioned, almost like pop stars, you know. So of course it has an impact. Imagine that tomorrow he says, I don't want to work anymore. Okay, I will put somebody here and I will retire. There will be a huge impact on the stocks. So it's for the good and for the bad. In this case, at the moment, for the good. People like when they can relate that there is a person leading there. And we are reaching the end of the class. And for the next class, next week, I would like you to give suggestions of companies that you would like to see analyzed. Mauricio mentioned his company, Gates. I would take a look. Saito mentioned SAP. Write down in the chat, which company would you like to see analyzed in our next class? Okay. I will take a print. Good, good. Okay, interesting. It can be Brazilian companies because they will probably have the English version, okay? So we have here the floaty, compassion. Until now, we didn't have two votes for the same company, so I will have to choose. Salesforce is very interesting. Embraer is very interesting as well. I will think even for the other classes, okay? So I will consider your suggestions. But I like the suggestions so far. Let's see. Okay, very good, guys. So if there are no other questions, if there are other questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. If there are not other questions, we are going to finish here. And next Thursday, also at 9, we'll be back here. Thank you so much for your participation, okay? And it's very, very important and very nice to have this contact with you guys. Next class, I will make an activity and I will split you in rooms for you to discuss among your colleagues, okay? Because I want you everybody to practice as well. So I will make a dynamic involving the company that I choose for the next class. Let me just print it here. All right. So once again, thank you very much for your participation and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.